Good rising, brethren. This is Big Judah, coming to you guys from California. Before I begin, give all praise to the Most High, Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother, who is wisdom, who is the Holy Spirit. Acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai. I pray that the Most High blesses this lesson this morning, gives more knowledge and understanding of the events of the past, in order to understand the events that are currently happening on the earth, so we may know what's soon to come on the earth. Gonna kind of tie up a couple things that we've been learning, and it kind of reflect back on some other videos to kind of give more understanding. What we're gonna see right now is that how this land here has been a blessing also of a land that actually provides for our physical well-being, but also our intellectual well-being. It confirms the blessing of the Most High of knowledge and understanding. Now, I've already made a video talking about how the lands here were more elevated, closer to the Most High, closest point to the stars. We've known now that we've been taught that Mount Everest was that point, but come to find out that it was actually a land in Ecuador. If you want to read about this, yeah, that's why I brought this right here, so you guys can check that out yourselves. But of course, we know that Aristotle and them, well, let's read that middle section. Aristotle had imagined that the highest part of the earth and nearest to the skies was under the Antarctic pole. Other sages have maintained that it was under the Arctic. Hence, it was apparent that both conceived one part of the earth to be more elevated and noble and nearer to the heavens than the rest. They did not think of this eminence being under the equinoctial line, observed Columbus, because they had no certain knowledge of this hemisphere, but only spoke of it theoretically and from conjecture. Okay? And then, of course, they could push their ideas just by making it the official, doctrine or official theory, and it's taught as a fact. Now, we've read this book, or we've gotten into a little bit of it before, but we're going to read one section that kind of was most I put in my mind to share with you guys again, because it just confirms this whole notion of a more noble land, risen up higher to the stars. When we read this part right here, talking about Teotihuacan and the knowledge that these people had that the other nations didn't have. And it took them hundreds and hundreds of years to catch up to the information that these people already had. All part of the blessing. We had the land under our control, so therefore we had the blessing of knowledge and understanding. The other nations were in their lower levels of land, of hot and cold, and they were pretty much left out of the loop with this information. So this is just confirming what it is that we've already been shown right now by the Most High. Let's read this section right here. What Harleson's investigation had shown was that a complex mathematical relationship appeared to exist among the principal structures lined up along the Street of the Dead, and indeed beyond it. This relationship suggested something extraordinary, namely that Teotihuacan might originally have been designed as a precise scale model of the solar system. Now, the only reason they could do that is because they had that knowledge and they had these lands where they could actually observe the solar system. Okay? At any rate, if the center line of the Temple of Quetzalcoatl were taken as denoting the position of the sun, markers laid out northwards from it along the axis of the Street of the Dead seem to indicate the correct orbital distances of the inner planets, the asteroid belt, Jupiter, Saturn, represented by the so-called Sun Pyramid, Uranus by the Moon Pyramid, and Neptune and Pluto by as yet unexcavated mounds some kilometers farther north. Now, this is the part right here where it shows you that these people were not over here. And look at when they start to get this knowledge and understanding. If these correlations were more than coincidental, Then, at the very least, they indicated the presence at Teotihuacan of an advanced observational astronomy, one not surpassed by modern science until a relatively late date. Here we go. Uranus remained unknown to our astronomers until 1787, Neptune until 1846, and Pluto until 1930. Now, there you go. Talk about their own astronomers, all right? Their European astronomers did not have any of this information or understanding until they got possession of the lands over here, until they got possession of the information that was over here. That there shows you they've had their lands for thousands of years, but they didn't have the knowledge of these planets. The only way they got the knowledge of these planets was once they got control of the area here. Then all of a sudden, their knowledge and understanding of many things increased. You see how that works? So this is just more, confirmation of the fact that, they had to find the noble lands first. And then after they found these promised lands, would then their, knowledge and understanding be increased, showing you how the land is tied to the blessings. You don't just get the blessings, just any old way. The blessings come through the having control of the lands. So that was one main point I wanted to talk about right there. Okay, so like I said, this is more confirmation, because you always just think like, well, how do they know so much over here? How is they had all this information over here? How is it that if the Holy Land was over there in the so-called Middle East, shouldn't they have that information over there as well? Because that land over there supposedly is tied to the blessings. But as you can see, these blessings that they got did not start to manifest themselves until they came over to this land. Okay? Another book that we're going to review here, that then will just confirm what, then we'll be able to understand what's going on, why these Europeans were not allowed, why they didn't have this information until later. And now we understand why they have all of these observatories being set up over here. Because this is the promised land. Now, people had been in Africa for a very long time. If Africa was also part of this, wouldn't they have got that information before? You see? Now, this is actually really important here. Let me go to my book real quick. This is page 86 of that Archaeology and the Book of Mormon, okay? It says, Mayans' intellectual achievements. As we approach the Caracol, or astronomical observatory, our guide explained, perhaps there is no archaeological structure at Chichen Itza which was of greater importance to its ancient inhabitants than this one. In this building, the priest astronomers studied the heavenly bodies. They were outstanding scientists, attaining knowledge which would have been the envy of any people in the world in their day. Perhaps their knowledge of astronomy was more complete and comprehensive than that of any race of antiquity. Well, that would be totally true, because that understanding came from them being the Most High's chosen people and the Most High's chosen land. We see they don't make that correlation. They don't make that connection. Okay? It says the Maya priest astrologers plotted the courses of the planets, including dim and elusive Mercury. Well, it was dim and elusive to many others because they didn't have the lands and they didn't have the observation, prowess that the people here did. So accurate were the measurements of those ancient Mayan astronomers that they differ only slightly in degrees and minutes from those of our present-day astronomers, aided by powerful telescopes and advanced mathematical formulas. They were fully aware of the 365 and a quarter day year and developed a calendar of an 18-month year of 20 days each. Okay? Plus a 5-day week at the end of each year. To take care of the remaining 1/4 day, they made corrections for leap year at convenient intervals. This they computed and put into daily practice, long before the Julian calendar was adopted in Rome, and in consequence, centuries before Pope Gregory the Eighth called for a conference in 1582 when our present-day calendar was created. And again, as you can see, 1582 is now after they had control of our lands and control of our information. So the present-day calendar was still pretty much predicated upon finding the lands and finding that blessing. Now you start to understand why it's okay for you to know who you are, but it's imperative that you don't know where your blessing is. You know, it's imperative that you don't know that your blessing is right here, because you can know who you are, but as long as you don't get your blessing, as long as you're still concentrating on the Middle East, okay, the so-called Middle East over there and so-called Africa over there, then they're good with that because they just want to keep your blessing. It says the old Mayan astronomers didn't stop with their observations of the movements of the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets, but compiled tables of lunar eclipses and predicted these with astounding accuracy. In his most recent book, The Rise and Fall of Maya Civilization, Dr. J. Eric S. Thompson discussed at considerable length the astronomical knowledge attained by the Mayas. He declared that it was a great intellectual achievement for the Maya priest astronomers to construct a table for predicting when solar eclipses would be visible. He, like most writers, gives the Mayas full credit for the complete development of all their astronomical knowledge. However, it may be possible that they inherited many ideas from their ancestors, the ancient Israelites. The ancient Hebrew prophets attained a profound knowledge of the stars and planets by direct revelation from heaven. For example, the Lord appeared to Abraham and gave him power to look into space, as if he were using a modern telescope. The Most High showed Abraham a marvelous vision of the numerous works he had created and explained the various heavenly bodies at which Abraham was looking. The ancient prophet wrote, "I saw the stars, that they were very great, and they multiplied before mine eyes, and I could not see the end thereof." Okay? So, like I said, the Most High had already opened up this knowledge and understanding to our posterity. He already opened up to our ancestors, and they've been handing it down to their posterity for these thousands and thousands of years. And then they can observe it because they were in the lands of their blessing. The Lord explained to the ancient patriarch the times, seasons, and the laws which govern the solar system. The knowledge of astronomy received by Father Abraham and recorded for his posterity is in complete agreement with modern astronomical science. Moses also received revelations from the Most High regarding astronomy and a vision of the heavenly bodies, the Most High's creations, similar to those received by Abraham. In their scriptures, these ancient Hebrew patriarchs handed down their knowledge of astronomy to their posterity. The Nephites brought the Hebrew scriptures with them from the holy city to the New World. And so one is not surprised to find such statements in the Book of Mormon as the following: "And it appeareth unto man that the sun standeth still. Yea, and behold, it's not so. For surely it is the earth that moveth, and not the sun." Perhaps the basic ideas of astronomy which the Nephites had were handed down to the Mayas. Having a land like this, where you can go out with your naked eye and observe the skies like this, is also a reason as to why knowledge has been increased. Knowledge was increased for anyone that took control of our lands, as you can see. Because as the Gentiles took over our lands here, all of a sudden their knowledge increased, their understanding increased, and their blessings increased. So we're just starting to put some of these puzzle pieces together in order to gain more clarification, as these lands are the ones that the Most High had elevated to be closer to Him in order to understand Him better, in order to confirm the things that He had already shown our people. So I just wanted to do that for you guys this morning. All praise is to the Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother, who is wisdom, who is the Holy Spirit. Acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai. Shalom.